Hello from London. Now, because London is such a popular city to visit, there have been a lot of areas that come up that tourists think that they should definitely go to when they come here. But actually, us Londoners know that they are overpriced, tacky, and too crowded. And honestly, we want to tell you to avoid them at all costs. So in this video, we're going to tell you which areas those are, but also give you some great suggestions of alternatives that we think you'll like a lot more. So let's do it. For those of you who have been around this channel for a while, you already know my thoughts on Leicester Square. But if you're new here, hi, let's just say I'm not a fan. I mean, look at what we're working with here. We've got McDonald's, M&M World, TGI Friday, American candy stores. Yeah, that's what you want to do when you come to London. Go buy some overpriced American candy. I don't understand. Yeah, Londoners do not come through here unless we have to. If we're getting somewhere, you can usually tell who is a Londoner who's doing that because they're walking really fast, like kind of with their head down and their earphones and just trying to get through as quickly as possible. And it's kind of weird because a couple centuries ago, this used to be the cultural hub of London. People would come here for shows and to get their fill on entertainment and culture. And now it's actually the opposite. It's where good culture and good taste goes to die. So if you want global fast food and strange casinos and to come to an overpriced cinema, then come to Leicester Square. But otherwise, we're actually really close to other areas that have culture and good food and good drinks and a better vibe where you'll actually find Londoners. So I would say go those places instead. Come and eat in Chinatown. There's a whole range of what you can find here in Chinatown. There's a lot of places that you can get street food. I love stopping into Taiyaki and getting one of their taiyaki. It's this little pancake fish that you can fill with either sweet or savory stuff. Makes for a great snack. Or you can stop into one of the famous bakeries in the area. You'll find lots of affordable eats in there, and you can actually try a whole bunch of different ones because everything is so cheap and so yummy. After that, you can walk 2 minutes up to Soho, which is a very buzzy area, especially in the evenings, where you're gonna find good bars, good restaurants, and lots going on. This is like where the things are happening, especially at night. And we actually have a video that tells you about some great things you can do around Soho in the evening. So make sure you watch that after this. If you read a travel guide, which is probably not written by a Londoner, that says that Camden Market is a cool, eclectic place to come in London, they're wrong. Camden Market, unfortunately, lost its cool and eclectic reputation about 10 years ago when it got bought up by some rich people, and those rich people drove up the rent prices here. So unfortunately, a lot of the good independent vendors and shops couldn't afford to stay here. And now we have lots of shops that are just basically selling tat, which is British for There are some okay places, of course, but you really have to dig. But also, this market is so popular that it gets so crowded, especially during the summer and especially on the weekends. I appreciate it looks really dead right now, and that's because it's -3 degrees on a Thursday in January. So it is actually very quiet, but generally, Londoners avoid Camden Market because it's not very good, it has a lot of crap stuff, and it's also usually very, very busy. Instead, come here to Camden Passage, which actually is not in Camden, but is 30 seconds away from Angel Station. And this lovely little street alleyway here is lined with a ton of amazing independent shops and cafes, which is really nice. It's managed to maintain its charm and not be overrun by big commercial chains like you find at Camden Market. And that's why Londoners love to come here, especially during the week when it's usually nice and quiet. Also, if you love antiques, this is a great place to come on a Wednesday or a Saturday because they have a pop-up antiques market with actually very affordable items that you can buy, but love it here. This is Oxford Street, the busiest shopping street in all of Europe, and it sees 500,000 people on average per day. So honestly, walking on this street can be hell. Now, we are filming this on a Monday before noon in the dead of January on a very cold day. So it doesn't look that busy, but I'm telling you, if you come here on a Saturday during December before Christmas, oh my God, you will never want to leave a street as quickly as you would do on that day. So Londoners generally will try to avoid walking on Oxford Street as much as possible because it's kind of a nightmare most of the time. And besides Selfridges, the department store that's next to me, most of the shops you'll find on Oxford Street are big global brands anyway, so you're gonna find them all over the world and you don't necessarily need to come to them in London. And if you do still want to go shopping, instead I have two other recommendations for you. Just a few minutes walk from Oxford Street is Marylebone High Street. This is actually one of my favorite places to come shopping, and that's because they have a really nice mix of mid-range boutique chain shops, as well as independent shops, cafes, restaurants, and even charity shops, which have a really nice selection of things to buy. You'll also find way less crowds here than you would on Oxford Street, and the vibe that you get around Marylebone is just more relaxed and almost feels like you're in a little village. So I really like coming here to go shopping. Plus you can just stroll around, get a coffee, go into Daunt Bookshop, do your shopping, have some lunch. There's lots of things you can do and see around here. Alternatively, I also love the vintage and secondhand shops that you can find around Shoreditch on Brick Lane. You can find really unique, interesting pieces that are secondhand, so it's better for the environment. And if you're over there, go check out East End Prints, which is what I think the best place to get Londony prints in the entire city. And finally, we've got Westminster Bridge and the South Bank area near the London Eye. I know so many Londoners who are trying to avoid this bridge at all costs and taking different routes to be able to do it. And the reason is that this bridge gets so incredibly crowded, understandably, because people want to come up here and take lots of photos of Big Ben, Houses of Parliament, and of course people want to go on the London Eye and they want to do Shrek's Great Adventure and the London Dungeons. I have no idea why, that just perplexes me, but apparently they do. It's also prime areas for pickpockets because they know all the tourists are here, and there's even scam artists doing the ball and cup game that we talked about in our London scams video. So if you can avoid coming onto this bridge or going down there, I would recommend it. However, I also completely understand that if you're coming from Westminster, from the Houses of Parliament, and you want to go to the London Eye, this is really the only route you're going to take. And maybe you do want to come take photos and you're going to deal with it. That's fine, but just know that Londoners would rather die. Instead, let me tell you about one of my favorite areas in London called Bermondsey. Bermondsey is pretty centrally located. We're actually not far from the River Thames, London Bridge, and the Shard, but uniquely you get a pretty villagey feel here. Bermondsey is actually quite a historical area. A couple of centuries ago, it was filled with industry, things like factories and tanneries, and you can actually still see remnants of those times in some of the old buildings here. It's pretty cool. And also, if you've ever read Oliver Twist, this is actually the area that Oliver Twist takes place in. These days, it's a nice, lovely, quiet area where you can come for nice restaurants, good cafes, and there's also some good shopping here too. Hello from London. I have tourists tell me all the time that they end up booking tickets for things that at the end of the day they realize wasn't really worth it, or they had to queue up for a long time to get in, or they just didn't really feel like they enjoyed. And that's because a lot of people come here and don't know about the things you should do, but also the things that you shouldn't do while you're here. So in this video, I'm going to tell you 5 things I think that you should avoid when you're in London, and also some great alternatives that I think you'll enjoy better anyway. Let's start with the view from the Shard. The Shard behind me is the tallest building in Western Europe. You can pay £32 per person for a ticket to the view from the Shard, which of course has amazing views over London. It's obviously the highest place from London that you can get a viewpoint, but you're gonna pay that ticket amount and you'll basically go up there, get your pictures, and call it a day. I have a better alternative for you. Instead, go a few floors down in the same building and book yourself a table at Gong, a luxurious Chinese-inspired cocktail bar where you're gonna have almost the same views as you would up at the view from the Shard, but instead of only paying for the ticket, you can take that money and get yourself a cocktail, and they're really good cocktails here. But if you've got the kids in tow and you don't want to take them to the bar, that's fine. You could instead book in for a special afternoon tea up in the sky at one of the restaurants in the Shard called Ting. The afternoon tea here is amazing, highly recommended. Have you ever seen one of those hop-on, hop-off tours with those big buses with the open tops filled with tourists who are just going around the loop seeing the biggest tourist attractions? Well, you can do that, but at 41 pounds a ticket, maybe that's gonna be a bit too steep for you. So instead, I have a much cheaper alternative. You can actually hop on one of our public red double-decker buses and get a very similar vibe, but for only £1.65 per ride. In fact, if you take the route number 11, it goes by loads of the major attractions here in central London, so you can hop on and hop off as you please, or you can just sit on the bus and go around until you make a big circle and see it all. Okay, let's talk about Leicester Square. It's a funny one. It is right in the center of London, in between Piccadilly Circus, Covent Garden, Chinatown, and all these other areas. And it is the perfect area to completely avoid. It is a soulless square that is covered in international food chains, weird brands, casinos, and there's even the M&M store. Instead, I would go a few steps away to Soho, which is one of the buzziest, coolest areas in London. Also a few steps away is Chinatown, where you can eat really well, drink really well, and we've actually got a whole video telling you how you can spend an entire day in Chinatown, which you can watch next if you want some ideas for what to do there. So to summarize, there are much more interesting areas super close to Leicester Square, so you can completely avoid this while you're here. There are 4 attractions here in London that often get put together in these ticket bundles that, frankly, are terrible. They're soulless, they're experiences you can do in many other parts of the world. They're not particularly very London focused, and they're really expensive. I call them the Awful 4. And the Awful 4 are the London Dungeon, Shrek's Great Adventure, the London Aquarium, and that creepy wax museum, Madame Tussauds. There are so many other better things you can spend your money on in London, so I'm gonna tell you about 4 better ways to spend the 30 to 40 pounds you would have paid per ticket for the Awful 4. Number 1, booking afternoon tea. You can find very affordable afternoon teas around the city, most of which are kid-friendly. Number 2, get tickets to a West End show. We have amazing theater shows here, and you can find tickets in that price range for sure if you book in advance or you do last minute. Number 3, go see some live jazz at Ronnie Scott's. You've got a world-famous establishment right in the heart of Soho, you got live music, and you got good drinks. It's perfect. And number 4 is right behind me. This is the Tate Modern, a contemporary art museum, which is actually completely free to enter. But if you want to take that ticket money and spend it on something, you can see one of their paid exhibitions or go crazy in the gift shop. Next up on the list, the London Eye, what used to be the tallest Ferris wheel in the world, and now that spins people around in glass capsules for 30 minutes at a time. That's all well and grand, except for 1, you gotta pay up to £36 per person to get on it. 2, you still have to queue up, even if you have a reserved time slot. And 3, you're stuck in this capsule with like 25 other people for 30 minutes at a time. Instead, a great alternative is the Sky Garden. At 160 meters or 525 feet above ground, this is actually 25 meters higher than the London Eye. Sky Garden is the tallest garden in London, and it's also one of the tallest viewpoints in all of the city, with 360-degree views of the city skyline. And the best part is that it's completely free to visit. You just have to make a reservation in advance, which those do book up quickly, so make sure you do them ASAP. Or if you don't manage to get a reservation, you can try to get a walk-in on the day and see if they have any spaces available. Hello from London. I'm Jess, the founder of Love in London, and I have been working with London tourists for years. And there are quite a few things that I hear tourists spend their money on that I'm like, why did you do that? That was such a waste of money. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you about the things that tourists end up always wasting their money on and how you can avoid them, keep your hard-earned money, and use it on something better and more enjoyable instead. So let's go. First up, taking taxis. I have heard so many London tourists tell me that they were too nervous to take public transport here, so instead they took taxis everywhere on their trip, which you can do that. Just know that it's gonna cost you way more money than if you were able to just take public transport. If you are a bit nervous about it, we do have something to help called our London Transport Guide, which includes a massive PDF explaining how everything works in the city and also 2 tutorial videos showing you exactly how you would take a London bus and a London tube. So there's really no reason for you to be so nervous that you have to take taxis everywhere. I'm not saying don't ever take taxis in London. I will sometimes take them to the airport or from the airport, and also on nights out, I usually will take a taxi home so I'm not traveling by myself. But I'm just saying, don't use it everywhere that you're going in London. Also, if you need some help with how to get from the airport to your hotel in London, we do have 2 videos that will explain all of your options, one for Heathrow and one for Gatwick Airport. So make sure you watch one of those next so you know all of your options. Continuing on the theme of paying for public transport, you might have seen something pop up that's called a daily travel card, which is essentially unlimited travel for an entire day. You want to avoid buying one of these like the plague, and here's why. So we have something called a daily cap here in London. So if you're paying with contactless debit or credit, mobile pay, or even if you end up opting for an Oyster card, as you travel throughout the day, you will hit the daily cap for the amount of zones that you're traveling through. So for example, most tourists stay in zones 1 and 2, it's the center of London, and the daily cap is currently £8.80. Now, if you look at how much a daily travel card costs for the same zones, it is almost double what the daily cap is. So you're basically almost paying 100% more to travel in London with a daily card. So just don't buy. Do not buy them. I've literally asked TfL why they exist, and they were like, couldn't really give me an answer. It just seems very silly. Oyster card. Now, an Oyster card is essentially a prepaid card that you can buy and add a credit to, and then you can use it to pay for public transport here in London. But you actually don't need an Oyster card, so paying £7 for each of them for whoever you're traveling with is a waste of money. And that's because you can actually use contactless debit or credit cards, or if you have Apple Pay or Google Pay, one of those mobile pays, you also can use that, and it's free. You don't have to pay £7 to be able to use them. So might as well save the £7 and use contactless instead. And if you're about to say in the comments, but Jess, think of all the foreign transaction fees on my card. Well, we're gonna tell you how to avoid those later in the video. Also, you will probably see a visitor Oyster card option floating around the internet. Do not ever get one of those. They are even more expensive. You have to pay for shipping. Sometimes they don't even arrive. It's just absolutely not worth it, and you don't get any additional discounts on either types of Oyster cards. It's the exact same price to take the tube and the bus as it would be if you do contactless debit or credit or mobile pay. Finally, there is an instance where it would make sense for you to buy an Oyster card, and that's if you have kids traveling with you that are 11 to 15 years old. If they are, you can get something added to your Oyster card that's called a young visitor discount, and that gets them 50% off travel for up to 2 weeks. So if you're in London for like more than 4 days, then actually the cost of the Oyster card and then also getting that discount added to the Oyster card for your kid does make sense. Roaming charges for using your mobile phone while you're in the UK. So if you've never been abroad before, you might not know that your mobile company will charge you extra to use your phone in a foreign country. So first off, you need to call your mobile phone provider to see how much they're gonna charge you to roam internationally and when you're in the UK. Now, if it's more than like $8 or $9 a day, that really starts to add up if you're here on a longer trip. Instead, you can save money by going for something that's called an eSIM. It's basically something that you install on your phone that lets you use local mobile rates, so you don't get charged for using roaming, and it's much more affordable. We have a company that we recommend for that. We'll put a link in the description box to them, and also there's a little discount code we can give you. spending a lot of money on not good food. Now, when I travel, my favorite thing to do is to eat well and to drink well. So it is my life mission to make sure that none of you spend and waste your money on bad food. We do not have time for bad food. Okay. Now, in my opinion, there are two ways to end up wasting your money on bad food. The first is to go to restaurants and food places that are near the touristy attractions. You can sometimes find good places, but if you're just wandering around and you don't know where you're going, that is a recipe for disaster. And the second way is to follow things that are TikTok viral or Instagram reel viral. Generally, places that go viral like that are more about pretty food and how it's gonna look for the gram, and not about actually tasting good. And those places always end up being really expensive. My recommendation to make sure that you don't waste money on bad food is to plan ahead. You basically are gonna need to know where you wanna go to eat to make sure you're going someplace that is well reviewed and is actually good and worth the money. If you want to know the good food spots that we love at Love in London, then make sure you pick up one of our travel guides. Our itineraries and our casual tourist guides all have locally loved food places all around central London and in the outskirts as well. And if you're wandering around stuck without some place to go, you can pull out the digital map that comes with our guides and you can find something on the spot. By the way, this Pizza Express behind me is a chain restaurant, and they're not the worst in the world, but if you're in London, there's like way better pizza, so don't go in one of these. Don't waste your money on any London attractions just because people told you you have to do them when you're in London. Listen, you should do what you want to do while you are traveling. Don't let Jill from down the road, who went to London in 2009 for 3 days, tell you have to go to the Tower of London. If you don't like history and you don't like crown jewels and staring at old walls for 3 hours, don't spend the money on the tickets for the Tower of London, because you're gonna feel like you completely wasted your money. However, if you do love history and old stuff like that, then you should definitely go for it. But I'm giving you permission to only spend money on the attractions and things that you want to do on your trip, so you can feel like you got really good value and like you didn't waste your money. Also, if you are one of those people that loves to do the major attractions in a city and you want to hit them all while you're here, you can save money with an attractions pass called the London Pass. I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video, but we have an article that helps you to figure out if the London Pass is going to be helpful for you and help you save money. So we will leave a link to that down in the description box. Hop on, hop off bus tours. Now, I know it's a little controversial, but for me, you're paying £40 per person to do something that is peak touristy. Not really my vibe. Plus, all of these companies basically just do the same 1 or 2 routes over and over again, and you're very likely that you're just gonna get stuck in traffic and sit either in the cold or in the hot, waiting for this bus to creep along. Also, they're not great for the environment. And we prefer supporting smaller tour companies over big global conglomerates. So we like to tell you about the great tours and experiences you can do around London that are run by small to medium-sized businesses and independent tour guides. And you can see all the ones that we recommend in the tours and experiences section of our website, which we have linked down below. Plastic water bottles. Not only is this obviously not very good for the environment, but if you're trying to buy a water bottle in a touristy area, they know they've got a captive audience, so you are not gonna get off with a good deal on that bottle. Instead, I would recommend, of course, a refillable water bottle. Now, in terms of public water fountains that you can use to refill it, they're kind of few and far between in London. However, you can go into any pub or cafe and ask them to fill your bottle up with tap water, and they basically by law have to do so. Plus, most people would just do it anyway because it's nice. So bring this around and you will save yourself on having to buy any water. Also, if you're eating out at a restaurant here, often the server will say, do you want sparkling or still? Those you usually have to pay for because they come in bottles, but you can actually just go, actually, I'll just take tap, and they'll bring out free tap water for you. You save money on that too. Hotel breakfast. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule, but in my opinion, hotels in London tend to charge quite a bit of money per person for a hotel breakfast. and the food is not really up to par with what you pay. On average, you're gonna usually see about 20 pounds per person added to your nightly rate if you opt for breakfast at your hotel. And if you're American and you're used to like the big buffet breakfast, it's not really as much of a thing here unless you're at one of the big American chains. Instead, I would recommend going to find a local cafe to have a nice, affordable breakfast in the morning, and maybe one day you could choose a really fancy place to have a really over-the-top, beautiful, ornate breakfast, and that can be like a fun thing for you to do. Foreign transaction fees when you use your card abroad. Okay, some banks and credit card companies will charge their customers foreign transaction fees when they use their card to pay for something in a foreign currency. And these fees can be like 3%, 5%, and that really adds up if your trip is over a few days. But the good news is it's 2024 and there's no reason that you should be traveling abroad with a card that charges you foreign transaction fees. So first off, if you have a card that you want to use abroad, contact your bank or your card provider and ask them what fees they charge you to use it abroad. If they do charge you, we have an article that tells you about some great cards that you can get that do not charge you foreign transaction fees. Especially if you're American, we have a lot of options. So click the link in the description box of the video to have a look at those. Hello from London. Americans, my fellow countrymen and women, this video is for you. I am a New Yorker that has lived in London for 10 years, and I often see Americans making certain mistakes when they come to London, whether it's behavioral or cultural. And that's completely fine, but let me tell you about those mistakes and how to avoid them so you can not only put your best foot forward when you come here, but you also just have a really great time. So let's hop into it. And also don't worry if you make these mistakes anyway, because Lord knows I definitely made them the first time I came to London, and look at me now. So let's go. Okay, let's talk about tipping culture. First off, in the UK, no one's ever gonna turn down or be offended by extra money, so even if you get this wrong, it's not a big deal. But when you're in restaurants, it works a bit different here. The waitstaff are paid more than the waitstaff back in the US are, so they're not relying solely on tips like you would expect back in the States. But what you'll find is at most restaurants in London, there will be an optional service charge added to your bill automatically. It's usually around 12.5%, and that is all you need to pay for service. Unless you've had bad service, then you can ask them to remove that and pay nothing, which is fine. If you get a bill and the service charge wasn't added, then you'll want to add 10 to 15%, either paying by cash, or you can ask them to add it to the charge that's going to be added to your card. Now, for bars and pubs, if you go up to the bar and you order yourself, tip is not really ever expected. However, you're always welcome to leave £1 or add a little bit extra to your card charge. No one's gonna say no to that. And if you get table service at a bar or a pub, you'll probably see that optional service charge added again. If not, same rule applies as in restaurants. You'll wanna leave 10 to 15% by cash or on your card. Number 2, small talk. Now, one of the best traits that Americans have, in my opinion, is that we are super friendly and tend to talk to anyone, which is so nice and great when you're traveling. But you should know that in London, Londoners generally will keep to themselves more, and they're not quite as open to small talk as you might be used to back in the US. So for example, you probably won't strike up a conversation with somebody on the tube or on the bus. People will generally have their earphones or headphones in and keep to themselves and stick to their own thing. However, that does not mean that Londoners are not friendly, and especially if you need help, if you get lost or you're not sure which tube line you need to take, if you ask somebody, usually they are very willing to help you as much as they can. Also, a lot of what I just said goes out the window if you're at the pub and a Londoner's had quite a few drinks and they're buzzing. Of course, everyone gets a lot more friendly and a lot more chatty. So go to a pub if you want to talk to people more, I guess. Also, it's customary for people to say here, how are you? Or you okay? They're not actually asking if you're okay and if something's wrong. It just means, how are you doing? And even if you're not doing well, usually they want you to just say, yeah, I'm good, thanks, how are you? And don't want to hear your whole life story. So keep that in mind. Speaking loudly in public. There's something about our American accents and voices that it feels like when we speak, it can be heard a mile away. I don't know what it is. that makes it feel like that. But you might notice that Londoners, and actually around the rest of Europe, that people tend to speak a bit quieter than what we're used to back in the US. And you can kind of point out an American in a crowd because you can hear them before you can see them. Something I have continued to have to work on. I still can speak quite loudly, so I've had to train myself. However, just be conscious of how loud you're speaking when you're in a quiet area or you're at a restaurant, just so you're not disturbing anyone. And of course, this all goes out the window, as mentioned before, when everyone's had a few drinks and we're all just really loud and it actually doesn't even matter. Not taking public transport. I know that a lot of Americans have never taken public transport before or are not used to it, and that's completely fine. But in this city, we thrive off of it. The majority of Londoners and tourists will take public transport to get around the city and maybe the occasional taxi. But don't be afraid of the system, even if you've never taken public transport before. It's actually pretty easy to get used to once you've done it a few times, I promise. And never rent a car when in London. First off, you pay £15 a day to even drive that car around central London. You won't find parking, and if you do, it'll be expensive. You're gonna get stuck in traffic. It is definitely not worth the hassle. Just take public transportation and taxis when you need to. Next up, ordering drinks at pubs and restaurants. There's a couple things I wanna tell you. First off, if you want water, usually the server will ask you, do you want still or sparkling? Those are both bottled options that you will pay for. If you want to get those, that's completely fine. Or if you want just tap water, which generally is free, you can just say, just tap's fine, even if they haven't presented it as an option. You can also ask for tap water for free at basically any bar, pub, restaurant. It's very easy to get, and sometimes with a little bit of ice, sometimes not. Also, you should come here fully expecting to not get as much ice in your drinks as you would back in the US, but that's okay, because it's actually better for you to not drink really, really cold drinks. So there you go. Also, you should know that here in the UK, if you order a cider, it's not like the non-alcoholic ciders that you would usually get back at home. Here is generally alcoholic, so if you order a cider for your child, your server is gonna look at you very funny. So keep that in mind, but also try cider, it's great here. And finally, the drinking age here in the UK is 18, and then it's actually 16 if the kid is with a guardian and there is a meal being ordered. So have fun with that. I definitely took advantage when I came here when I was 20 years old, so. Not knowing how to use the plugs here in the UK. Okay, the plugs here are obviously different from what we see back in the US. They're also different from the rest of Europe. They're actually 3-pronged, which you can see what it looks like here. So you will need an adapter to be able to plug your dual voltage appliances into the wall here. Now, if you plug something into the wall with an adapter and you notice that it's not turning on, you might have to flip the little switch that is next to each plug. That is a safety feature because the voltage here is actually double what it is in the US. So it's easy to switch on and off if you need to. So if something's not working, just toggle the little switch and it will turn it on. Don't ask me which way means that it's on and which way means that it's off. 10 years on and I still don't know. I just wiggle it until something happens. Listen, I'm very happy that we have finally shed this incorrect assumption that the food in London here is bad. It's actually world class here. And if you want to try British food when you're in town, of course, I think that's a great idea. However, London is known for having the most amazing multicultural culinary scene, so make sure you are taking advantage of that, especially because you can try food from countries that you might never get to visit in your lifetime. So make sure you are branching out, trying new things, and trying all different types of cuisines while you're here. Oh yeah, we're sitting in front of Dishoom for a reason. So this is a really good modern Indian restaurant. We have tons of great Indian here. There's good Sri Lankan, there's good Vietnamese. I mean, truly any cuisine that you could ever want to try, we have a restaurant here that will serve it and that will serve it well. Hello from London. Okay, listen, myself and the team at Love in London, we obviously love London, okay? We do this as a job, we choose to live here. How could we not love it? And we know that many of you will love it too. However, some tourists don't. Some come and they end up hating London. But the truth is that usually the people who end up hating their time here, it's because they've made a couple of mistakes or assumptions that ended up ruining their trip. So to make sure that you have a great time in London and that you end up loving it, we're gonna tell you about those mistakes and what to do instead, so you have a fabulous trip to London. So let's go.
Oh, you're so sweet. Hello. Oh my goodness.
Mistake number 1, you visited London during the peak season. London's peak seasons are the summer months when the kids are out of school, so that's generally June, July, until the end of August, and also the 2 weeks around Christmas and New Year. Peak season generally means there's lots of crowds, things get booked up much farther in advance, it's the highest prices you'll find for hotels and train tickets, and just general chaos. Oh my God, I remember going to the Natural History Museum between Christmas and New Year, and that is one mistake I will never make again. It was absolutely rammed with people and kids everywhere, and was wholly unenjoyable. So you might want to avoid visiting London during peak season. However, I appreciate a lot of people can't do that. So here's what will help. Avoid visiting the most touristy areas and attractions when you're here. That's where you're gonna find the most crowds, around Westminster, Covent Garden, on the South Bank. And instead go explore more local areas like Shoreditch, Hampstead, Brixton, and King's Cross, where we are. You'll get to avoid some of the crowds because these areas aren't as affected by peak season, and you'll also just get to check out really cool areas that lots of locals like to come to as well. Mistake number 2, acting like a sheep. Basically, everyone who tells me that they don't like London does the same touristy route of Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey to Big Ben, over to the South Bank, and they wander around like zombies, taking the same picture as 9,000 other people and basically only seeing a sanitized subset of the city. No wonder why you didn't like it. You haven't actually experienced anything that is London. It can take a bit of effort and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but generally you will enjoy London more when you see the actual London, not the Disney version of it. Like going to a local pub and chatting with Londoners, or exploring one of our leafy green parks in one of our residential areas, or taking a graffiti class at the back of a contemporary art gallery in Notting Hill. That's when you'll start to love this city. Number 3, having too high expectations for the weather. Now, it doesn't rain in London as much as people think. However, the weather does vary significantly, both from month to month and even hour to hour. For example, as we're filming this, the sun's out, I see blue sky, it's raining on me. This is classic British weather. So if you're coming to London this summer and you expect to be in sundresses and shorts in the sunshine all day, every day, or you're coming in the winter and you think you're gonna have beautiful, lovely, fluffy snowfall all over Big Ben and the Tower of London, adjust your expectations. Have them really low, and if you do get good weather, it will be a pleasant surprise. Always have low expectations in life and you'll never be disappointed. A lot of films that take place in London throughout various centuries often depict the population here as a certain type of person, usually wearing a cap or a top hat, saying cheerio and pip pip, ready to sweep a chimney or solve a mystery. And let's be honest, more often than not, it's a white dude. So a lot of tourists come to London thinking that they're gonna experience the quintessential British experience. But the truth is that London is one of the most diverse cities in the world, and these films only depict a very small subset of the population here. When you meet Londoners, they're from all over the planet with different backgrounds and different stories. What's amazing is that that diversity bleeds into a lot of different facets of the city, from the history to the architecture to, my favorite, the cuisine. You can try literally any cuisine you want in this city and it's probably gonna be good. You'll feel like you've traveled all over the world just staying in central London. So if you adjust your expectations, you can see how beautifully diverse that this city is, and you can also experience and learn about multiple different cultures, not just one. Mistake number 5, you didn't research costs and make yourself a budget ahead of time. We recently had somebody email the Love in London team complaining about how he couldn't find any affordable accommodation options in London for his quite sizable family. And he said he was about to cancel his trip because he was not being catered to at the price level that he was looking for, which quite frankly was a really, really low level for London. Now, I'm not sure what he expected us to do about the price of accommodation in London, but tourists that come to the city and don't have a look at what prices are going to be before they get here are very likely to hate London. London is one of the most expensive cities in the world, so you do really need to do your research and know how much things are going to cost you, from a pint at the pub, to a meal at a nice restaurant, to a West End ticket. Otherwise, you are going to be in for a shock, and it's really easy to overspend and go way over your original trip budget. And being really clued in on what the costs are going to be when you get to London will help you to create a really accurate trip budget ahead of your time here, so that you can know what you're going to be spending a lot on, what you plan to save on, and how much you're going to be spending overall, so you won't get a big shock credit card bill at the end of your trip. Mistake number 6, cramming too much into your itinerary. Americans, I'm looking at you. You guys do this all the time. And listen, I know you get very limited amounts of time off work, but if you're not enjoying that limited time, then what is the point? I see lots of tourists, Americans, come to London and have these itineraries packed from morning late until night, where they spend hours walking and on the tube, on the buses, and they spend their whole time rushing around, running late, trying to get from place to place, and not actually enjoying anything that they're doing. I also see people trying to cram multiple different day trips out of London, even when they're in London for a short period of time. Even going to Paris for the day, that is 5 hours on the train in one day. That's way too much. How can you actually fall in love with the city and also enjoy your holiday if you're constantly rushing around on your feet and not actually taking the time to enjoy and soak up what you're seeing? You can't. I am giving you permission not to do everything that you want to see in London. Listen, some of us Londoners have been here for over 10 years and we have still not seen everything. There's so much to do, it is literally impossible.
Hello from London. I'm Chelsea and I've lived in the city for over a decade. I've explored, eaten and boogied my way through every corner, and I'm going to let you in on 8 of the biggest packing mistakes tourists make when visiting London. Let's go. By the way, we have a London packing guide that tells you exactly what you need when visiting London. It includes a digital printout which categorises London by season, London weather by months, jacket and shoe purchasing recommendations, and a list of all the essentials you need when visiting this awesome city. It includes all of the essential information that is perfect for first-time visitors to London. Link in the description. If you're coming to London, you are going to be doing a lot of walking, like a lot. And our public transport is great, but our parking is not. So we tend to do a lot of walking to stations and around the city. So you're going to need good walking shoes. Otherwise your feet are going to hurt a lot. Remember, London is an old city, so there's a lot of cobbled streets and our sidewalks aren't that great. So the last thing you want to be doing is sightseeing in heels. We also recommend packing a pair of shoes that are waterproof. We don't tend to wear rain boots around the city, but the weather in London is very unpredictable, and yes, it does rain a lot. So as long as your shoes are waterproof, you'll be fine. This is just the case for sightseeing though. When we go out in the evenings, we like to dress up a little bit. So if you're eating out, it's totally valid to pack a pair of heels. As mentioned, London weather can vary a lot, and we have seasons here. So I'd recommend going on your weather app and checking a few days before you visit to make sure you're packed and prepared. My biggest recommendation, above all, is to pack layers. The weather varies a lot, even within a day. You could be going outside, to the tube, to a museum. You'd need 3 completely different outfits. It can be really cold outside and boiling on the tube. I also see people assuming they'd be able to wear a sundress and nothing else if they came in like August. But even in the summer in London, I'd recommend packing layers. It's March and the weather's about 15 degrees today, and this is what I'm going for. Have a think about what you're doing whilst you're here. If you're into a more casual trip, you don't need anything that's a bit more fancy schmancy. But if your itinerary calls for dinners out, going somewhere a bit more bougie, you're going to want to dress up a bit. Also, FYI, you don't really need swimwear in London. Bonus tip, always pack a spare outfit in your carry-on in case your luggage gets lost. I promise it will save you a lot of stress. Generally, I'd recommend bringing the smallest size suitcase you can. London is super chaotic and our transport is small and busy. It's also not crazy accessible, so anything you can do to make yourself as nimble as possible will help you avoid the stress. Big suitcases are also more expensive on flights, so packing a smaller suitcase saves you money, especially if you're here for a shorter trip. However, you will want to bring a suitcase you can leave some space in for souvenirs. You'll definitely want to buy some things, and the last thing you need is some last-minute stress when you realise you've not got enough room for all your goodies. London is a massive city, so make sure you've got a big enough bag to pack everything you need for the day. You might want to carry a reusable water bottle. You can fill this up at water filling stations or pubs and cafes. A reusable coffee cup. Lots of cafes will give you discount if you use your own cup. Sun cream and layers like extra hats, scarves, jumpers. Portable phone charger. It can be a nightmare to find somewhere to charge your phone in London. And you might want to use your apps on your phone like City Mapper or our itinerary maps, of course, link in description. And headphones. If you want to be a true Londoner and plug yourself in and ignore the world. Generally, a hotel is going to provide these for you, but I'd recommend phoning ahead, just so you're not caught short. If you're staying in an apartment or with your friends, then you might have to pack these with you. But overall, hotels will provide hairdryers and towels for you. However, if you like using washcloths, you might want to bring those along. It's not a standard really for British hotels to provide these, but again, give your hotel a ring so you're not caught short. I know we all like to think we're super organised and we obviously don't forget anything, but I'd really recommend having printouts of things like your passport, your credit and debit cards, just in case. Things happen, stuffs get lost, there's pickpockets, it's better to be safe than sorry. If you do like to have physical copies of things, then definitely keep it separate from everything else, or have a virtual backup, either on your phone or email. You'll also want the address of where you're staying handy, just for peace of mind. If you're travelling to London from abroad, you're going to need a few plug adapters so you can use your tech. In the UK, British plugs look like this. So you'll need a plug adapter that looks like this. In the UK, our power operate at around 240 voltage, not 120 like in the US. So you're going to want to check if your appliances are dual voltage before you come over to the UK, otherwise it can be dangerous. Told ya. What does dual voltage mean?
It means your appliance can operate at both 120 and 240 volts without a problem, like this one.
Most laptops and phones nowadays are dual voltage, but it's best to check before you leave just in case. You can actually get a converter to convert single voltage to dual voltage, but we wouldn't super recommend these. Heads up, we use different plugs here in the UK to the rest of Europe. So if you're planning a longer trip, you might want to bring different plug adapters with you. Otherwise, you're going to be stumped. You've been warned. British customs are super strict. So if you try to bring things through customs and security, they're going to pick you up on it. This is things like flip knives, meat, dairy, even some plants won't make it through. And rough diamonds, if you happen to have those lying around. You'll also want to check your medication because it might be a controlled substance in the UK. You'll need to carry it on your person and get a letter from your prescribing clinician, otherwise it's taken off you. British security is also really strict. This means you'll want to check that your luggage meets travel requirements before trying to get through security. Don't bring any liquids over 100 millilitres. They'll take them off you. A quick note, the 100 millilitre limit doesn't apply to things like baby formula, things for medical purposes or special dietary requirements, although be prepared to bring proof. And obviously, if you want to get through with baby formula, you need to have your baby with you. Sharp objects like nail files over the length of 6 centimetres will also be taken off you if you try to take them in your carry-on. But don't panic, we're a major city. Anything you can't bring through, you'll be able to buy in London.
London can be intense when you visit for the first time, and there are some unspoken rules that you probably won't know about before you get here. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you about those rules so you can make sure you follow them and you'll feel like you're a Londoner straight away when you arrive. And the first unspoken rule that you definitely want to listen to is to not stand on the left side of an escalator in a tube station. She's nailed it. And that is because the system is set up for people who want to walk down on the left side, and if you want to stand, you stand on the right side. I can guarantee you, if you do stand on the left side of the escalator, you'll have some Londoners coming up right behind you very fast, asking you to get out of the way in a somewhat passive-aggressive term. We love efficiency here, so make sure if you're standing to stand on the right side of the escalator. Being efficient is very important for us Londoners, but it does not end with the tube. We also walk very fast everywhere we're going. Now, I know that this rule is tough to follow if you're a tourist, you're trying to take in your surroundings, you don't know where you're going, but you do need to remember that London is a city that's filled with people who are trying to get to work and live their lives, and we like to walk fast and get places as efficiently as possible. So if you find that you want to take a picture of something, or you need to pull out your phone and look at Google Maps, you can totally do that. Just make sure you step to the side so you're not blocking people who are trying to efficiently get to work or get to whatever they have to do, and you're good to go. Bonus efficiency tip, when you are about to go up to the barriers in the tube station to pay, make sure that you have your payment method ready to go. Don't get up to the barrier and then suddenly look around for your phone or your card or whatever you're using to pay. It holds up the entire line behind you, and we love when we can just, all of us just beep and glides right through. It makes it very efficient, so have it ready to go. I know it could take a little while to reprogram yourself there, and if you do mess up, all you have to be able to do is apologize to the locals. There is a stereotype that specifically British people apologize for everything, and as someone who lived in London for 11 years, I will say that that stereotype is 100% true. And I feel like I've kind of fallen into it as well. Sometimes someone will like bump into me, and I'll be like, oh, sorry, even though it wasn't my fault. So if you do accidentally bump into someone or do something to somebody, make sure you do have a nice little polite sorry, a little apology. Usually goes a long way here. If you don't do that, you might find you get a passive aggressive, oh, don't worry about it, all good, something like that, and you don't want that. People love to queue in the UK, which means to line up in an orderly fashion, and we really, really stick to it. So if you've gone someplace and you see that people are queuing up, make sure you do not jump the line or try to squeeze in and you get to the end of it. Otherwise, you'll have some pretty angry people telling you to scram, get to the back of the line. If you're not sure if you actually have to be in the queue, just ask somebody in the line. They'll be able to tell you why they're queuing up and if you need to or not, and then you can just go around if you don't need to. But ask, don't just assume. There is one exception to this rule, and that is at the pub. We do not line up single file when we go to order drinks at the bar at the pub. However, we all kind of just congregate along the bar as we can, and we do keep track of who got there first so we can all order in the correct order. So if the bartender comes to you first, but the person next to you was there first, you can be like, oh, they were next. Or I've been known to be like, excuse me, I was here first and I would like 2 pints, thank you very much. Speaking of ordering drinks, when you're out drinking with Londoners, you should expect people to be buying drinks in rounds, including yourself. We do this because it saves everyone having to go up and queue at the bar every time that they want another drink. So you buy drinks for everybody at the table, then the next time somebody else buys a round, you get the gist of it. Just make sure you're not that person that ends up leaving or stops drinking when it's time for them to buy their round, because that is a big no-no, and we're not doing the whole like, can you Venmo me the money kind of thing. We don't do that. You just make sure you get it, or if you really have to leave, next time you go drinking together, you get the round. It's a really good excuse to have to go out to drink again, like the next day or something. And another thing I see tourists getting wrong when they're in a pub in London is Buying bottled water. We have safe to drink tap water here in London, and what most Londoners will do instead of having to buy plastic bottles and spend money on it is to just carry around a reusable water bottle. And that's because you could go into basically any bar or cafe and ask them to fill up your water bottle with tap water for free, and most places are going to be completely fine to do that. And when you sit down at a restaurant and you ask for water, the server will usually say still or sparkling, and those are bottled and you'd pay for those. But instead you can say, actually tap water is fine, and we'll give you free tap water, no problem. And when you pay, be sure to use your contactless method on your card or mobile pay. We have become a very card-centric city here. Basically, nobody uses cash anymore. And we love to pay with contactless because it's much faster than having to do the chip and pin or the swipe, and then you have to sign or you have to put your pin in. And we love efficiency. I think everybody loves efficiency. So make sure that you're paying for things with the contactless feature or using Google Pay or Apple Pay or Samsung Pay on your phone. It will be much faster. And before you say, I don't want to use my card because I get charged foreign transaction fees and it's get add up. This is 2024. Nobody should be traveling abroad with cards that charge you international currency conversion fees. If you need a suggestion for a card that's not going to do that, we have a whole article that has lots of options, especially for you Americans, and that will be linked down in the description box of the video. Now, this last tip is really important, but it's one that a lot of tourists don't realize. If you come from a country where people are used to being in each other's spaces and being open and chatty, you will probably find when you come to London that there's an unspoken rule here that we're kind of the opposite. Londoners tend to keep to themselves, and we also like to have our own space if possible. We are in a major city, so not always. One of the places we see this the most is on the tube. You will probably notice that people do not talk to each other on the tube, and we actually even have a little joke here in London that if you accidentally make eye contact with someone on the tube, it's like the most awkward thing in the world. So don't expect anyone to be open to striking up a friendly conversation with you while on the tube. However, if you do need help with something, people are generally very willing to help you. So don't be afraid to ask if you're trying to figure out where you're going. Hello from London. Now listen, tourists, we love you, we really do. But we have developed some unwritten rules in this city that help to keep us all moving fast and going in the right direction. And if you don't know about these unwritten rules, then you might end up pissing off some of the Londoners here. But the good news is, once you know them, then you're good to go. You'll get along with everyone and have an amazing trip in this city. So we're gonna talk you through the things you should know so you don't piss off any Londoners. Let's go. Okay, let's talk about the tube. Now, us Londoners use the tube day in and day out, and in this city, we love efficiency. We have places to go and people to see. So we've kind of created some unwritten rules in this city to make sure everyone's moving as quickly as we can. So the first thing that you should know is that when you go into a tube station and you're getting up to the ticket barriers where you're gonna pay, you wanna have your payment method ready to go for when it's your turn. Londoners tell me all the time how annoyed they get when they're behind somebody going up to the barriers, and then as soon as it's their turn, they're like start going around trying to find their phone or their Oyster card or whatever, and it holds everybody up behind them. Honestly, like the more efficient I glide through that day, it just like makes me happier. So definitely make sure you do that as well. Another big one with Londoners is what you do on an escalator. So the rule of thumb here is that if you do not want to walk down the escalator and you want to stand, then you stand on the right. So remember that, stand on the right. And then if you do want to walk down, then you're going to go on the left side and you're going to walk and make sure you're doing it at a good pace because we like to glide down those escalators. If you don't, you'll definitely get someone coming up behind you very quickly and being like, excuse me, and you'll need to shuffle to the side. One that you will find is a rule around the world, but that we're really committed to in this city is that if you're waiting to get onto the tube, once the doors open for a carriage, let everybody else get off of the carriage first before you try to shuffle your way onto it. It just makes it easier. Also, it's kind of rude to just hop on as people are still trying to get off. When you get on the tube, you will see these seats that are labeled priority seats. These are for people who are not able to stand, who might be pregnant, or have some kind of disability, and basically just need to be able to sit down comfortably when the tube is moving. So try to avoid sitting in those seats. If you do sit in one of those seats, just keep an eye out for anybody that might get on that looks like they need to sit down, or if they have one of these badges on that says they're pregnant or has a hidden disability, or just looks like they need to sit down, and you can offer them your seat. In fact, any seat that you're sitting in, it doesn't have to be a priority one. It's nice to do that if you can. Now, if you have a bag with you, if you can, make sure you put it on your lap. Don't put it on one of the seats next to you so that somebody else can sit there. And if you're standing and you have a backpack on, make sure you take the backpack off and put it between your legs, because otherwise you will basically be smacking people in the face with your backpack, which is really annoying and uncomfortable. So just keep it between your legs so that everyone can squish in and not be smashing their face into your bag. And finally, when you get onto a carriage, if it's busy, make sure that you don't crowd around the door. Move down into the middle of the carriage more, which means that more people can get on and they don't have to wait for the next train. We just get people moving to where they need to go faster. Okay, let's talk about money. You'll notice when you get to London that Londoners love efficiency, and that's why you'll often see us paying for things with contactless cards or with Apple Pay or Google Pay, and rarely with cash, even if the place does accept cash. So if you're able to pay with a contactless payment, then definitely go for that, because that means that everyone behind you won't have to queue for as long. But if you only have cash, that's fine too. Also, if you go someplace and you see something listed in pounds, as it will be because we are in England, don't ask the staff what that is in whatever your local currency is. They don't know. And also, currency fluctuates constantly. So that's kind of a weird question to ask somebody in the country that they live in. Just have an app on your phone so you always know what the conversion is. And finally, if you come to London and think it's expensive, don't complain about it to Londoners. We know it's expensive. We live this every single moment of our lives. We walk outside, and for breathing, we are charged £15. So please keep that to yourself. We don't need to talk about it any more than we were already dealing with it. One thing you should know about us Londoners, we walk fast and we know where we're going. So if you're on the pavement walking in front of us and you suddenly just stop short, you might have one of us bumping into you because we are walking fast and it's hard to just stop short at this crazy speed. So if you need to look on Google Maps and figure out where you're going, or you just want to look up or take a picture, that's completely fine. But instead of stopping in the middle of the flow of traffic, just move to the side closer to a building or near something that people aren't going to be walking past anyway, and do it there just so you don't obstruct that flow of traffic and everyone can get on their way at an insane speed. That being said, if you're also traveling in a group that's like 3 people or more, please do not all walk 3 in a line while going down the pavement. Usually that means that it takes up most of the pavement and people can't get around you. They will struggle to get by you if they're coming in the opposite direction. It's just kind of a pain. Try to stick to like 2 and 2, or if it's really narrow, you might just need to kind of like go one behind the other every once in a while. Just don't take up the whole pavement so no one else can get around. And listen, I know that you guys love the Beatles and you want to come and see where they shot the iconic album cover here on Abbey Road. But the thing is, by law, if somebody is walking across it, the cars that are oncoming have to stop. So if a lot of tourists are in the crosswalk trying to take a photo or a video, it ends up creating a huge traffic jam for the locals in the area. You could end up making somebody late to pick up their kid at one of the local schools. So if you do want to take the photo, just be sure to try to do it when there's no oncoming traffic so you don't make somebody stop and cause a traffic jam. There you go. By the way, just to clarify, you can use that crosswalk to actually cross the road and have the cars stop. Just don't stand in it trying to get a photo and hold everybody up for way too long. But you can use it to cross, that's completely fine. You might notice a lot of street performers around London, especially in areas like Covent Garden and around here, which is the South Bank. Now, these street performers, they have to audition and also get a permit for them to be able to play or perform wherever you're seeing them. So if you stop and you watch for a bit, or especially if you get involved, please be sure that you leave them a donation. You can either leave some coins or some paper pounds, Or actually, most of the performers these days will have a little card machine so you can tap and donate that way. So not having cash is not an excuse. But yeah, that's how they make their money. So be sure to leave a donation if you watch. One of the things I find kind of funny and interesting about British culture is how strict they are about their queues or their lines. Basically, you never ever want to cut into the queue and jump ahead of anyone because people will not be happy. And even though London is filled with foreigners and people from all over the world, we still stick to that like crazy. So if you're in a queue for something here, make sure you do not accidentally jump the line or try to do it because people will not let it happen. If you see houses that you want to take pictures or videos of, please be respectful of the people that live there. For example, everybody always wants to take pictures of the beautiful rainbow houses in Notting Hill, and that's fine. Just be sure to keep your distance so you don't get any pictures of actual residents that live there. And don't do things like going up on the stoop or going to the door because that is very invasive, and I'm sure you wouldn't want somebody to do that to your home. So just be overall respectful of the people that live in these places. Don't criticize our food here in London. First of all, a Londoner will tell you how good the food is here, especially because we have world-class international cuisine that you definitely have to try while you're here. But also, you are definitely gonna be judged if you come here and you say you didn't think food was very good, because we're gonna know that you just didn't try hard enough to go to some good places. And sorry, but that's on you. So make sure you're trying good spots. We literally talk about a million, so you have no excuse. Don't complain about the weather to us. We know. Still hot. Hello from London. Listen, London is generally a pretty safe city, but it is a big city. So there are some things that you do need to do while you're here to keep yourself and your belongings safe. So in this video, I'm going to tell you about some common scams you might come across when you visit London and how you can avoid them. So let's get into it. So we have these rickshaws that will go all around central London and in the touristy areas, and they are basically unregulated. And while there are, of course, lots of, I'm sure, very honest drivers who will charge you the normal rate that you're supposed to be charged to take one of those, I've heard so many stories of tourists that agreed a price when they first got into it, and then when they got to the destination, another higher price was demanded of them. And I've heard enough stories that I definitely would say that it's best to avoid these. If you want a different way to get around central London that's not a rickshaw, you could rent a city bike, which is called a Santander bike. You could get one of the Lime electric bikes or the other companies that offer them here. Or of course, you could support a great small business and do a bike tour or a walking tour around the area. And we'll put lots of suggestions for companies that we think do great tours around central London in the description box of the video. Support small business, it's much better. The second scam I want to talk about is selling of fake tickets. Now listen, I know it's kind of annoying if you come to London and the show that you wanted to see was sold out, or you haven't managed to get tickets for a certain attraction yet, but if somebody comes up to you in like Leicester Square, where we are, or Piccadilly Circus, offering to sell you tickets, and especially if they are at a big discount, avoid, avoid, avoid. A lot of times these places or these people are scamming you, and you're gonna actually end up losing a lot of money and have pieces of paper that don't get you into anywhere. I'd also say to avoid the little shops near Covent Garden and Leicester Square that are selling half-price tickets. They're not a scam. They are selling actual tickets usually, but they often come at a pretty big markup, so you're better off just avoiding. Also, beware of anyone trying to sell tickets for anything that is free. For example, watching Changing the Guard at Buckingham Palace, anyone can go, you don't need a ticket, you don't need to pay for one, definitely. That is completely free, you do not. That is completely free, you do not. Don't give anyone any money for that, you literally just rock up and watch. There are some things you can do to protect yourself. First of all, as a rule, do not buy any tickets from anybody off the street, ever. Second of all, always buy your tickets either from the venue's actual website or a reputable seller like Today Tix and the TKTS booth and official London Theatre website are all great for buying your theatre tickets. And to avoid any disappointment, make sure you book things like theatre and attractions in advance. Then there's the street game scam, sometimes called 3-card Monty, sometimes the cup and ball game. There's basically a bunch of different variations of these street games that people play on the major bridges, like here at Westminster Bridge, or around the major tourist attractions. Basically, the way it works is there'll be a guy on the side of the bridge with 3 cups in front of him, and he'll put 1 ball under one of the cups. Then he'll bet a passerby like 20 pounds that the person can't find the ball after he zhuzhes up the cups. And it's basically unwinnable because with sleight of hand, the person gets rid of the ball, and so the ball's under none of the cups. So no matter which cup you choose, you're not gonna win. And it's the same with the card game as well. These games are also run by groups of people. There's usually one person watching for law enforcement, one person who is an actual winner but is a fake plant, so it makes it look like it is actually winnable. And overall, you just want to avoid all of this. Also, even if you're just watching, the area right around these places are usually prime spots for pickpockets, so make sure you are keeping an eye on your stuff. And actually just don't watch this stuff. I mean, really, you're gonna come to London and watch some balls and cups? Just a bit weird. So this one is a bit more high tech, but it could be a problem for tourists who don't have access to their own data roaming when they're in London. Scammers can use something called a pineapple, not the fruit, sadly, but it's basically where they set up a fake Wi-Fi that people connect to, and then as soon as you connect to it, scammers can basically access everything on your phone. Your social media profiles, any credit card or bank information you put in, your contacts who try to do some phishing scams. What they do is they set up a Wi-Fi network that looks like it's supposed to be the secure one, like at the airport or in an area with lots of shops, so that you connect to it, but then actually it's not the secure one. It's the one that's gonna take all of your information. Luckily, there are a few ways that you can avoid this. First, you can get your own data roaming package, whether that's through your original phone provider, or you can get a UK SIM or download an eSIM. And we have some reputable companies that we recommend linked in the description box of this video. If you have to use Wi-Fi, make sure you use the legitimate one for the place that you're in. For example, cafes and shops usually will have a sign on the wall with the actual name of their own network and the password, so make sure you connect to the exact one, because the scammers usually make one that has like an underscore after it or that looks almost the same. You could also protect yourself by setting up a VPN on your phone and your devices, which is a virtual private network, and that basically protects all of your data and your devices from being scammed from these pineapples. Basically, your best bet is to have data set up on your phone so you can use that as much as possible without having to connect to potentially rogue Wi-Fis. This next one will show you that you definitely should not be leaving anything valuable on a table when you're in London, or really like any major city. This happens everywhere. Basically, there's a thing where if you leave, let's say, your phone on the table, that someone comes over and they've got some clipboard or a piece of paper, and they're usually asking for something that's like quite nice. Like, oh, would you mind signing this petition that supports our local boys football team for young people or something like that? And you're like, obviously I would sign that, that's so easy. Then they take the clipboard or the piece of paper and they put it down on top of your phone or your valuable without you noticing. You sign, and then they take it away and say, thank you so much, oh my God, you're so nice. And they take your phone with it before you even notice, because you're really busy thinking about how good of a person you are, which makes sense. So, moral of the story is, don't ever leave any valuables on the table. I have actually seen this happen in person a lot, both inside places like pubs and bars, but also when sat outside. So, rule of thumb, keep it in a pocket or in your bag. Remember, London is generally very safe, but hopefully these tips will make sure that you keep your money in your pocket and you have a great time. If you want more tips for your trip to London, click one of the boxes popping up right around me to watch one of our hundreds of other videos we have on this channel.